Piquet has spoiled Verstappen's future at Mercedes. In today's video, we are going to hear what Nelson Piquet Jr. said about Max's future and why it is so revealing. Juan Pablo Montoya's statements should also be considered. Vasseur's future and the possibility of another scenario at Ferrari will be discussed. And finally, we need to see where Red Bull starts from this year. Before we start, please leave a supportive like, and now let's see everything in detail. Rumors about Max Verstappen's future continue to grow after the immediate dismissal of Christian Horner and the shared vacation in Sardinia between Toto Wolff and Max Verstappen. The Dutchman's move to Mercedes in 2026 seems less and less like fantasy. Fueling further suspicions is Nelson Piquet Jr., who is Verstappen's brother-in-law, who during the Brazilian podcast Pelas Pistas clearly said, "We'll see what happens next year when Max will drive there," referring to Mercedes. Piquet Jr. made a surprising statement, then immediately tried to correct himself. No official word, but according to him, the announcement could come soon. According to the Brazilian, Verstappen will make the decision in August, and if he leaves Red Bull, his future teammate will be Kimi Antonelli. Context is key. Piquet Jr., as part of the family, is no ordinary insider. And it's precisely this that makes his statement more than just a simple opinion. Even though it was retracted, the statement has sparked attention in the paddock, which is already focused on the post-Horner moves and the internal rebuilding of Red Bull. The feeling is clear. Something is moving, and Verstappen's name continues to be at the center of every scenario for the 2026 grid. And, in my opinion, this sentence is very valuable because Nelson Piquet Jr. knows the internal dynamics of his family and therefore also of Verstappen. Being together with Kelly Piquet, the Piquet family knows all the internal dynamics. In my view, this sentence about Max's future is more of a gaffe than anything else. Max's future is sealed with Mercedes, despite attempts to change it.
Let's hear.
Also the words of Juan Pablo Montoya, who goes to increase the dose. Horner gone because of Verstappen or to retain him? Juan Pablo Montoya, former Formula 1 driver, says the issue is all about Verstappen. In an interview given to Beth, Victor Montoya clearly said the million-dollar question is, did Red Bull fire Horner because Max is leaving or to prevent him from leaving? The issue is central. The ongoing internal conflicts at Red Bull have resurfaced questions about Verstappen's future, especially with Horner's departure. Rumors suggest Max and Toto Wolff recently met in Sardinia while on vacation, possibly discussing Max's future with Mercedes. And Montoya also said Red Bull is in trouble, it will take time. Montoya expressed regret for Horner's departure, but believes deep changes in the team are inevitable. After Adrian Newey, now the main team is out too, and Laurent Messier has been announced as the new chief executive officer and team principal of Red Bull. Now he has to rebuild everything, technical structure, internal management, and new names to insert, Montoya said. It will be difficult in the short term, but they could become competitive again in the long run. The right choices and strong people will be needed. In short, Horner's dismissal is not an isolated incident. It fits into a phase of strong restructuring at Red Bull and reignites rumors about a possible farewell from Verstappen.
For many.
For Montoya, the two things are closely connected. Max's future remains uncertain with speculation, while Nelson Piquet Jr. is confirmed. Meanwhile, Vasseur's future at Ferrari is also undecided. In fact, Christian Horner's departure from Red Bull marks the end of a 20-year era. His departure was signed off by sporting director Oliver Mintzlaff, effectively ending the most stable partnership in modern Formula 1. With Horner gone, Toto Wolff is now the longest-serving team principal on the grid. He has been leading Mercedes since January 2013, and behind him are Frederic Vasseur and Andrea Stella, both appointed on December 13, 2022 by Ferrari and McLaren respectively. And the Frenchman took office in Maranello on January 9, 2023. And Vasseur and Andrea Stella have the same starting point, but with opposite results. In fact, the results speak for themselves after 2.5 years. McLaren has already won a Constructors' World Championship with Stella and seems to be on track for a repeat, if not a three-peat. With the drivers' title battle between Norris and Piastri, Ferrari continues to chase. Today's Formula 1 knows no continuity. In 2025 alone, 5 teams have changed team principal: Aston Martin, Sauber, Alpine, Red Bull, and Racing Bulls. Doubts about the future persist even at Ferrari. The recent words of Chief Executive Officer Benedetto Vigna do not guarantee unconditional trust in Vasseur. In a context where the average duration of managers is getting shorter and shorter, it's paradoxical that a technician with less than 3 years in office is already considered a paddock veteran. And this only highlights the real problem, the chronic instability at the top of many teams, including Ferrari. In recent years, we are seeing a rapidly growing trend in Formula One, but also in everyday life, there is less and less patience to see the results of a certain job. And so people want to change as soon as possible, to try to find the person who does the right job at the right time and with a certain speed. However, to build a winning team in Formula One, it takes years, and there needs to be a certain stability within the team, with key figures chosen by the team principal. Therefore, in my opinion, we should give Frederic Vasseur continuity for at least another year until 2026. Changing the team principal now would be a huge mistake because the problem is not the team principal but the car. Toto Wolff trusts Vasseur, calling him capable and stating that if Vasseur didn't work at Ferrari, he would hire him at Mercedes. And coming from a winning team principal like Toto Wolff, these words mean a lot. So from my point of view, Ferrari currently should not change Vasseur because he is not the problem. Changing him would be more problematic and require rebuilding a winning cycle from scratch. There's no reason to start over. The new team principal would have to choose new technical figures to put in Ferrari, as Vasseur is already doing for 2026. You would have to rebuild the base from scratch, like in the case of McLaren. Andrea Stella won the Constructors' title last year and will likely win both the Drivers' and Constructors' titles this year. The technical staff also performed well to reach the top, with Andrea Stella effectively managing the two drivers internally. At least so far, but it's more a merit of the team than of the team.
Principle. However,
There's a fairly alarming fact. Those who left Maranello continue to rise elsewhere. The latest case is Laurent Metier, former Ferrari, who took Horner's place at Red Bull, inheriting not only the role of team principal but also the operational and technical management of the entire Milton Keynes structure. A heavy duty, which however shows how much the value of certain former Ferrari is recognized outside. Metier's resume speaks clearly. He has worked in Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile in Toro Rosso in Ferrari and now leads one of the strongest teams in Formula One, Red Bull. His trajectory is not isolated for years. Figures grown or passed through Maranello assert themselves elsewhere. Andrea Stella joins McLaren, Mattia Binotto leads Audi project, Simone Resta moves to Mercedes. Aldo Costa in the golden years of Mercedes, and even Stefano Domenicali today leading Formula One itself. The real issue is internal management. In 20 years, Ferrari has changed 6 team principals from Jean Todt, Stefano Domenicali, then Mattiacci, Arriva Bene Binotto, and today Vasseur. Each change leads to an internal restructuring, with changes in roles, methods, and objectives. The result is a continuous instability that prevents the team from building a solid long-term project. And this somewhat reminds of the Italian political situation, with a succession of prime ministers in a few years. Red Bull is the opposite example. Horner has remained in charge for 2 decades, even through difficult years. The team has never lost its technical and organizational direction. Ferrari, on the other hand, has never had the same patience. Every setback generates internal shocks. Vassone is already under discussion, but before evaluating his work, one must ask if Ferrari is willing to support a long-term path. If you change again, you start over. Managerial consistency is needed to have a winning team, and so far this has been lacking. The idea that if Horner were available, he should be taken regardless of his charm, but it's not necessarily the solution. The real question for Ferrari is another one. Does it really want to build patiently, or will it continue to change in pursuit of the illusion of an immediate breakthrough? In short, Ferrari needs to provide continuity to Vasseur for the future of 2026, also because he knows well the technical staff he has recruited in Ferrari. And so he is the right person to amalgamate everything,
staff to search.
to make them work in the right direction. Continuity is needed, and the results will come in the long term. With constant sudden changes, there is no internal stability, but we also have to see where we start from. Red Bull now leading the team is Piquet, former Ferrari Racing Bulls, promoted to team principal and chief executive officer after the internal shakeup. A forced appointment, but one that leaves many doubts, because Mickey has a solid past from a technical sporting point of view, but has never directly managed a top-level structure. His time at Maranello is remembered more for uncertainties than leadership. Following Adrian Newey's departure, team principal Horner, communications director Paul Smith, and marketing head Oliver Hughes have also left the team. Red Bull is now in the midst of a complex reorganization, on the eve of the new regulatory era of 2026. In February, the team will face initial engine tests with a power unit made in-house at Red Bull Powertrains in Milton Keynes. A project wanted by Horner himself, which now risks losing coherence and guidance. In fact, the creation of the first Red Bull branded engine was the crowning glory of the Horner project. But the delays and internal problems that have recently emerged now risk exploding without his coordination. The team is considering how to reorganize the engine department and, above all, what to do with the key figures hired directly from the Extin principle. With Nui out, the technical director Pierre Rocher remains the central man for the development of the next single-seaters. But he can't do everything on his own. And Red Bull is already looking for new engineers to support him to avoid a technical collapse in the coming months. The priority is to strengthen the aerodynamic and structural department for 2026. Helmut Marko remains on the team at least until 2026, but his fate is closely tied to that of Max Verstappen. Well, the rumors about a possible arrival of Sebastian Vettel remain in the background, but the real issue is the technical axis. Red Bull needs skills, continuity, and stability. But that might not be enough. Christian Horner is also responsible for the failed partnership with Porsche. Porsche had contacted several teams when they wanted to return to Formula One. The Red Bull-Porsche agreement seemed finalized, but Horner rejected Porsche's arrival to retain full control over the team. As Red Bull's engine supplier, creating everything himself and giving the responsibility to Red Bull Powertrains to make the first official Red Bull engine from 2026, an equal role with Porsche probably would have given less power to Horner. A complete Red Bull engine would have put Horner in the spotlight. As the head responsible for the project, the vision of the founder, Mateschitz, was to make a collaboration with Porsche, and so Horner blew up this whole plan. And with the farewell of Nui, Marshall Wheatley, Red Bull has to start from scratch with the leftovers, and with the only one left inside Red Bull, namely Pierre Rocher, with whom he clashed last year. Adrian Newey, before the start of Red Bull's decline, with the famous Red Bull 20, which was Adrian Newey's last project, but it was not fully approved by the same English engineer. We all remember the internal discussions. And the 2026 hybrid engine, which requires 50% electric motor and 50% thermal motor, needs a lot of resources to invest. Ford is alongside Red Bull, but without direct experience in Formula One. And so, the internal instability of Red Bull also jeopardizes the future of Metier, who has done a great job in Racing Bulls. The Ferraris has faltered a bit. I certainly hope Red Bull rebounds at the most negative moment in its history. On the other hand, Christian Horner will go either to Alpine or to Aston Martin, where he will want to have full control. Or he could even start his own team backed by Chinese investors and thus establish the 12th team on the grid in Formula One. With the support of Ben Sulayem, who wants to integrate Chinese investors to increase the business of Formula One. But Horner has time to plan the future because there's still the garden leaf in the middle, which was also discussed yesterday. I want you to hear the words of Laurent Metier on the future of Red Bull, because they are fundamental to understand how this top team will evolve in the coming months. It's impossible to underestimate what Horner has built in 2 decades. Red Bull's rise to a Formula One powerhouse is credited to him, according to Piquet. Recalling also how it was Horner, along with Helmut Marko and Oliver Mintzlaff, who brought him back to the Red Bull structure 2 years ago. Our task will be to put the best technicians in a position to work at their best. Red Bull is built on talent and innovation, and we must continue on that path. 2026 will mark a transformative watershed, not just technically, but in every aspect. And we need to get there with a strong, united team capable of facing anything.
Change. In short,
Laurent Metier's current goal is to strengthen the internal climate. Because we literally have to start from the rubble, try to pick up the pieces and put them all back together. Rebuilding relationships that have been broken for a long time, and for Red Bull, this will be anything but easy. From my point of view, it will take time, it will take years, and maybe even some internal changes in the future. That's why Max, who needs to win today, not tomorrow, will change teams. Let me know your opinion in the comments about Vasseur's situation, about Max Verstappen's future, and about the current situation of Red Bull. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Daily Formula One and Ferrari news coverage here at Rostaduto. See you next video.